Why should I be worried about water? It's raining. It's a free ecosystem service, isn't it? Professor Water here. Thanks for asking. You should be concerned about water because water is connected to just about every sustainable development goal. If we get the water right, then we get just about everything else right. So, should I worry about leaving the water on while I brush my teeth? Of course you should, but it's probably not going to have much impact. But you should do it because you can. How about using low flow toilets? You should because you can, but again, it probably won't make much of a difference. How about making my grass grow by using water from municipal system? Here you probably can have a difference, but again, not as much as you want. How about the water that goes into the coffee I drink? Is that what I should be worried about? Now you're getting close, but I'm not sure you know why. Okay. How about bingo? Now you're talking. Meat and agriculture generally use most of the water. So if that's what you're really worried about, water, you should worry about your diet. That's where you'll have impact. But you still didn't mention one of the main issues. Let's dig into this wicked system challenge. Okay, excuse the corny beginning. It's good to get out of the regalia and that hat, funny hat. I wanted to get your attention to talk about a very serious issue, that of water systems. This is a profoundly complex, wicked system challenge, and you need to engage in some systems thinking in order to address it. And that's what this video is about. If you're in one of my classes, you're working through the system assignment, I'll put that link in the YouTube box below. This is an opportunity for you to practice your system thinking, to engage in one of the most difficult challenges there are. And let me begin by looking at a systems map. You shrink and get out of the way here. You see that little marble there? That's right where my head is, right above my head. That's how much water there is in all of the world. That's it. That's the water that's in the oceans, in the atmosphere, in the glaciers, underground, streams, lakes, everything. It's just that little bit of water. And of course, only a little proportion of that is the stuff that we use. So there's really not much water for us to use, but it's a renewable resource. It doesn't go anywhere. It keeps coming back because of the rain. It's exceedingly difficult to manage. It's because of its wickedness, because it crosses so many jurisdictional boundaries, because it crosses so many professional boundaries, because it's so critical in our lives. So let's begin an exploration of these challenges. Okay, here is a system map that shows where the water is. Over here on the left in the green bar is where you see all the water. Most of it, of course, is in the oceans. Just a little bit at the very, very top is the fresh water. The middle bar is all that fresh water, and where is it stored? Of course, most of it's tied up in glaciers, inaccessible to us. Just the very top is the groundwater, and then the surface water that most of us are familiar with. And then this third bar here is where all that is, and most of that, again, is frozen and inaccessible. So just a little bit of stuff up there in the rain, the atmosphere, and the swamps, and the marshes, and the rivers that we actually have access to on a daily basis. Here's another cool system map that shows where the water goes, how it's used. Over here on the left is water withdrawals, and that's the water that's taken out but returns to the system. So agriculture uses a lot of the water through irrigation, but a lot of it goes back into the system. Industry, which includes energy production, the big cooling towers, suck water out of lakes to cool the turbines, and then it goes back in. Water consumed over on the right here is water that leaves the system. So again, agriculture, most of the water transpires, leaves the system, and never comes back. Okay, let's look at another sort of system map, which is literally a map of water stress, water security, water scarcity. This is a prediction of areas that are going to be at high risk by 2050, largely because of climate change and over-irrigation. This is obviously focused just on the U.S. The next slide will focus internationally, but you can see that these counties in red are projected to be in severe water scarcity by 2050. And just glance at where those locations are. That should give you a little bit of heartburn. See, this California, Florida, the breadbasket, these are places where our food comes from in the U.S. These are some serious challenges. Here's the global map, where you can see projections are that by just within the next decade, the use of water is going to go up by 50%, largely because of prosperity. More prosperous people use more water. They have more municipal needs, they eat higher on the food chain, so they use more water. And you can see major challenges around the world for water security. Here's a famous picture that illustrates land subsidence. It's taken in California by Dr. Pollan, who studied these issues. It's a telephone pole, and you can see where the land used to be. He's marked it. Up at the top there is 1925. This is 1955, and down at the bottom where he's standing is 1977. It's subsided more since then because of overpumping. That is, we're pumping out fossil water. There's not enough recharge. There's not enough glacier melt. There's not enough rain to replenish the water that's being pumped out. And as a result, the soil is drying out. It's compressing, it's less moisture, and it's actually subsiding as the water table goes down. This is not just a phenomenon in the U.S. It's happening around the world under major breadbaskets. The aquifers are dropping meters each year. Okay, let me pause here and describe the way forward for the next 15 minutes. As you recall, when I mentioned earlier that this video is a part of an assignment that I do in my classes, this one focuses on water, other focuses on climate and urbanization and food and ag and fracking and all kinds of cool challenges of the Anthropocene. This one is the water system, and they all have in common the system thinking. You have to be able to identify the leverage points. You need to figure out where to intervene. You need to be thinking about feedback loops, positive and negative, and all the interdependencies. You need to figure out where to invest and what your priorities are. And so that's the background of this assignment. And in this case, I've asked you to distinguish among these 6 different options where we're going to invest the world's resources. And let's assume that the world resources are $100 and you've got control over all of them. So where should we invest them and why? That's the assignment. And the first one here is ag and food systems. The other is this energy water nexus, which is critical. Then there's the supply and demand of virtual water. What is that? And then there's the public health issue of water related to productivity and human well-being. And there's stormwater. The rain goes somewhere, picks up pollution, and sometimes causes great dead zones. And then municipal efficiency, the tap water, the sprinklers, the brushing our teeth, those sorts of issues that we talked about earlier. So where would you put your priorities? The reveal here. Let me get out of the way. So I'm going to justify these answers as we go through the rest of this video and explain why I think these are the right priorities. Pause and look at this, because if you've done this assignment, if you worked along with me here, you've already come up with these priorities before you've looked at this video, and you've made some decisions. And so sort of engage in a conversation with me and think through what are your rationale and how do they differ from my rationale? How is your understanding of the system different from mine? And now I'm going to begin a discussion of each of these with my biggest priority, which is public health. 1 million children a year die of waterborne illnesses like diarrhea. Right? That's 4,000 a day, 1 every 20 seconds. How many have died since we began watching this video? Right? It's just unconscionable, right? We can't let that happen. There are 1 billion people in the world who lack water, safe access to clean water. There's another 2 billion people, or 2 billion total, that lack access to sanitation. So water and sanitation and health so intimately connected. It's a basic human right. It's a condition of modern civilization that you have access to clean water and sanitation. And we need to put a lot of money here, in my mind. It's something that we can fix. We know how to fix. We've been making good progress on it, and we can fix this problem. We know how to do it. So I think this is our highest priority. And it's not just the health issues. It's a productivity issue. It's an equity issue. So if we don't have water coming into our house, how does it get there? Somebody has to go get it, right? It's usually a woman. It's usually a young woman. Like in this picture here, this is actually a wealthy rural woman who could hire a tuk-tuk in India to drive out to the spring, had a hose, could carry it to the spring and connect it up and fill up her jugs of water. In the cities, it's women that have to go to the water source with jugs and fill up their water supply. The equity issues are immense, or inequity issues. Most of us enjoy so much access to water. Like here in Singapore, this swimming pool literally thousands of feet above the ground on one of the skyscrapers. I mean, in some ways, the inequities are obscene. In South Africa, there's a statistic that describes it's a billion hours. Right now, 40 billion hours of labor lost. It's the equivalent of all the labor in France that is lost because of women, usually young women, going out on long treks, vulnerable to predation, that are not able to go to school, not able to engage in a productive economy, we're not able to benefit from their creativity and innovation, that this is lost. All this social capital is lost because we don't have access to reliable, safe drinking water and sanitation. Something we should fix. Okay, agriculture. That's the second largest priority for me. I put the most amount of money in that. As you can see, I put $35 of my 100, 35%. That's a significant investment of our resources, and the reasons to me are pretty intuitive. Let me try to convince you. I mean, first of all, 70% or so of our water goes into ag, so clearly we can have a big impact here. Second is, as you saw with the slide of the telephone pole, we are depleting the aquifers around the world to irrigate our crops. We're now harvesting and living off of fossil water, and that's deeply problematic. Water is also the sort of classic tragedy of the commons problem, that the water belongs to everybody and thus nobody. And if you don't suck it out, your neighbor will. So your neighbor's going to drill down further into the aquifer and suck out the water, acting rationally to irrigate their crops. And you're going to do the same thing because you're going to want to get the water that goes down a little bit further each year. It costs you a little bit more electricity and more to drill, but you're acting sanely and rationally when you're doing that. But collectively, as everybody in the region does it, we're acting insane because we're depleting the whole aquifer. Pretty soon it's going to be gone, and the whole industry will go belly up. So agriculture is something that's very difficult to change, in part because farmers tend to be pretty conservative and traditional in their practices. They need to really be shown. It's the show me state sort of mentality. You need to see the implications. You need to have demonstration projects. You need to prove that it works. It's not too expensive. It saves money, and then it gets adopted because agriculture is also incredibly efficient and innovative. Farmers make very few dollars. The margin is very thin there. They make very little pennies on the dollar that they invest, and so they're really keen to up that margin. So innovations get adopted quickly and spread widely. But you've got to convince people, and there are lots of good examples. There's lots of good irrigation techniques, precision irrigation, drip irrigation, other kinds of things that are possible and we see around the world. And there's precision agriculture agriculture that's coming online. And we'll talk about a lot of these things when we get to the ag system assignment, which is a little later down the road. So there's lots of things we can do, and probably the most important one is what we eat. Right? It's our diet. It's the food we put in our mouths. It's something we do 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. And I foreshadowed this when I talked about the meat and the coffee issues at the beginning of this video. And let's just walk through some of these issues. Here's from the Menus of Change site, but it's a water footprint analysis. You can find lots of water footprint analysis for different types of meat. But here you see that up in the top, that is per unit of protein or calorie, however you want to calculate it, per unit consumed, beef is by far the worst on this chart. And I think lamb is even worse than that. And we can get that protein here by beans much more efficiently. And we can do grains and other kinds of things and get a reasonable diet. So we can change our water footprint as individuals, as a society, by changing what we eat. So we can also change it by waste. We waste about 25% of the food. It gets wasted in the field, it gets wasted in transport, it gets wasted in the refrigerator. After we buy it, we throw it away. We put too much on our trays when we go to the smorgasbord. There's just 25% or so waste. So we can fix this problem lots of ways, but it's going to take some money and investment, some education, and maybe some regulation to make it happen. Energy. This is my third highest priority, but I only put 15% of my resources here. I wish I had more. This is a particularly wicked challenge. It takes a lot of water to make energy. In some regions, 20 to 50% of their water goes in to making that energy. So if you're concerned about water, this should really give you some pause, because we're likely to double the amount of energy that's consumed over the next couple decades as more and more people move into the middle class and start using air conditioning and appliances and smartphones and Zoom and what have you, right? So in order to supply that energy, we're going to need a whole lot more water, but we're already facing some water stress. Fortunately, there are lots of ways that we can sort of de-water our energy system, decouple it some, and it's a very important topic and complicated, and this graph behind me helps explain it. Let me get out of the way. You can see here different sources of energy along the x-axis, and then how much water they each take on the y-axis. Now, one of the main lessons to take away here is that firewood or other agricultural products, whether it's switchgrass or corn, are going to take a tremendous amount of water to produce that energy. So I really think that agricultural-based products are very problematic when it comes to the energy supply. Not only are we taking sort of food off the table to put in our gas tanks, we're also taking water out of our cups, out of our water bottles to put in our gas tanks. It's fossil energy from agricultural products is problematic. So the other big lesson here is go down to the other end and look at wind, right? Once you've made the steel for the tower, wind uses hardly any water to make the energy. Likewise with photovoltaic cells. The other aspect of solar here is where you heat up the molten and you require water to spin turbines and stuff, and that's where a lot of the water goes. But if you have just photovoltaic or wind, it doesn't take much water. The other big lesson to take from this graph, and you might want to pause and stare at it after I get out of the way, is that natural gas is not that bad. So a lot of people are really upset with fracking for natural gas because they think it loses water, hurts water, whatever, but that's really not the case relative to other sources of energy. It's in fact a lot better than coal or oil or nuclear. Right, so if you're really concerned about water, you should be for fracking. We're going to dig into that aspect of system thinking in another system assignment. So this graph, you can go back and look at it and move my head out of the way. It is a fascinating look at the wickedness of the relationship between water and energy. But that's not even the most wicked. It also takes energy to make water. Okay, so it takes water to make energy. The other side of the equation, it takes a lot of energy to make the water, to clean it, to filter it, to pump it into our houses, to store it. That takes a tremendous amount of energy. And again, this should give you pause because water demand is going to go up, as we've talked about, because of the rising prosperity of people. They're going to have more appliances and need for water, opportunity for water use. And that's going to take even more energy, which is going to require more water to make that energy. So it becomes even more wicked. You've got to crack this nut because both energy access and water access are two fundamental aspects of being a part of modern society. They're arguably human rights, and the demand for both energy and water are going to increase. And so we've got to figure out a way to work through this nexus. And there are solutions. That's the good news. Storm and source water management. Another big, wicked challenge. I think it's important, but I'm only given 8% of my resources to it. In part because it sort of pays for itself, but it's also the other issues are just so darn important. Let me explain what it is. So it's the ability of the forest, the soil, the earth to catch the rain and filter it and store it and recharge the aquifers so that we can use it in our irrigation for agriculture or pumping it out and for our drinking water. As opposed to hitting what's called impervious surfaces that are not porous, that won't let the water go through. So like roofs or roads or even our lawns. The rain hits it and it basically runs off. It picks up the feces from our pets, it picks up the droppings of oil from our cars, and it runs down and it goes into the creeks and rivers and bays, and it kills wildlife and habitat. So it's deeply, deeply problematic, as this image here from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation illustrates. This other image here shows the relationship between the cost of the habitat, of the forest cover, the pervious surface versus the cleanness. So this is the percent of forest cover along the x-axis, and this is how much it costs to treat the water, to clean it. So the water that we drink in comes out of our pipes in our homes and in places of business. It takes money, right, to clean it, filter it, store it. And if there is a whole lot of forest cover, like 60%, which is a lot of forest cover, it doesn't cost very much to filter and clean that water for us. But if there's only 10% forest cover, it costs a whole lot more. This is a classic ecosystem services conundrum. And here's another example of it. Let me move myself out of the way. I'll put myself down here with the cattle, kind of where I belong. But this is almost a fable. It's a mythical proportion story. It's told a lot to illustrate ecosystem services and the importance of them for water in particular, and source water protection. So New York City has great water supply. It comes from the Catskills and other places. It's one of the reasons why New York City is there, right? They've got this almost endless supply of really clean, abundant water. And it's starting to get polluted. It's starting to get full of cow stuff and pet stuff and leakage from our cars and whatnot. And the Environmental Protection Agency, the federal regulatory apparatus that monitors this stuff, said, hey, New York City, you're getting pretty close and you're going to have to start installing filtration systems. And that filtration system, New York City figured out, is going to cost somewhere around $6 to $8 billion with a B, right? A lot of money. And they realized that hey, maybe we can solve this problem by just maintaining the ecosystem services upstream where the source water is caught and filtered. And let's do that by getting the cattle out of the stream, by creating bioswales that keep the water that's running off the parking lot to stop there for a minute, filter through the soil, by plugging up or attaching the septic systems from houses that were decaying into a municipal water supply. Do all kinds of things, basically, to protect the ecosystem services. And it cost them about $1 billion to do that, right? But they saved maybe $7 billion. Now, I said this is sort of a mythical story now, but it certainly illustrates the ecosystem services issue and the importance of source and stormwater protection from an economic perspective. let me just tie this up with an example of a very famous river, the Potomac River. Right? George Washington had something to do with this. This is where Washington, D.C. is located. It leads into the Chesapeake Bay. Shenandoah Valley is here. I actually live way down here, just outside of this. But when I teach up in Arlington and near D.C., I'm up in this watershed. And here's an example of the relationship between the green infrastructure, the ecosystem services, and development, urbanization, right? Something that's going on all the time. So that's the watershed. Let me show you what it looks like in 1940, 1950. Right? The brown dots are the development, are the impervious surfaces, are the roads and houses and density where the stormwater's happening. 1960, 1970, 80, 90, 2000. 2010, which is where the most recent data was, projected for 2020 now, right? How about 2030 projections, 2040, 2050? Look at all that lost ecosystem services, right? That's an amazing amount of change and opportunity to affect green infrastructure. So I think this is a very important topic. I put some money in here, in part because it can pay for itself if we think it through and do it well. In part because it provides lots of other co-benefits. That is, it creates habitat for wildlife, so the biodiversity increases, and it provides green spaces for urban people to recreate in. It's an important topic that needs our attention. Okay, last, but is it least, this is the municipal efficiency row, the choice of investing our money, our energy into providing us with safe, reliable drinking water. Certainly an important, hugely important topic. It affects our health. It affects our property value. We need it to bathe and flush toilets and run industry. It's an incredibly important topic, but somehow I managed not to put any money in it. How can that be? Let's begin by looking at where the water goes. You can see here that only a little bit of it's actually consumed. We don't drink that much relative to these other things. And then shower and baths and toilets. The biggest thing is in the sprinkler system. So you can see why at the very beginning of this video I was saying, well, maybe the sprinkler system you can actually affect that. But don't worry too much about turning off the tap when you're brushing your teeth. Actually, you should turn off the tap when you brush your teeth, but it's not going to make that big of an impact, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't put much money in this. Other reasons is that we can actually solve this problem just through efficiency. If we price water, if we have utilities charge us the actual price of water, then we're going to have low flush toilets and low flow shower heads. We're gonna fix the leaky pipes and what have you in our buildings. We're going to pay extra for green buildings, some of which are like net water neutral. They don't use water. They catch the rainwater and filter it, and they can reprocess the sewage. It's amazing what technology is already helping us do. And this rise of efficiency is actually decreasing the water that people need per capita. There's more of us, so we're using more water, but each person is actually using less water in their home, in their municipality, because of these increasing efficiencies. Now, there are some challenges in the leakage in the pipes that connect the houses to the municipal water system. Some places leak like 50% of their water. It's just lost in leaky pipes under the roads and what have you. Now, we should fix that. But if the utilities are getting compensated for the true price of water, then they're motivated to fix that. If we can have building codes that require all this efficient appliances in the buildings, then we can fix this. This is one we can clearly fix through just a bit of policy and pricing. It's important, but I couldn't put any more money in it because the other issues are just so pressing. Okay, quite a journey. Right? We've covered a massively wicked, hugely important topic. There's really no easy choice here. People may lose, communities may lose based on the choices we make, but these are choices we have to make. Right? How are we going to solve this wicked water system? It's going to require thinking using a systems perspective, going to require understanding each of these subsets, all the interdependencies. You fix one problem, maybe you're going to solve some others. I really look forward to your solutions that you come up with in this assignment. Just let me close by bringing this image back. Get your head out of the way, Hull. I mean, if we can get the water right, we can solve lots of problems. We really can. And water, it runs through everything, right? Water ties all these challenges of the Anthropocene together. So we need to work hard to get water right.